How's it going, everyone? Welcome in to the NOLA Preps post-game show. Spencer Urquhart here with Chris, Dabe, and Joe Halm. Hope everyone's doing well out there. We'll start with Chris. You had the battle for the megaphone. Shaw, Rummel. Rummel got a big win there, 29-0. Chris, talk to us about what happened out on the West Bank there at Shaw.
Yeah, like you said, that one ended up 29-0. Romo scored their first two touchdowns in the first half of the first quarter off a couple of Shaw miscues. Shaw punter dropped a one knee to pick up a low snap, so the refs called him down at the 7, and the next play, Romo scored their first touchdown. Next Shaw possession, fumble at midfield. 3 plays later, it's 13-0. So Romo really kind of controlled the game throughout. But after that, the offense, they got in the red zone a few times, but then some penalties that set them back. They didn't get another touchdown offensively. Uh, Field goal, they got 3 field goals and then a pick 6 in the fourth quarter. So that's how that score ended up there. So it kind of unfolded in a way that was a little different than I expected. I thought it'd be kind of like what Romo did last week against U High, where it was tight throughout the first half, and then they just kind of took control with their run game in the second half. And that's what Romo did against Shaw last year, but this year played out a little different. So good reason for Romo to be happy with a win. They got some things to feel good about, but then as any coach, I'm sure Nick Monica is going to look at some of those, like he said after the game, they left some points on the board. So he can look at all that and try to get that fixed for when they open up district play in 9-5A next week against John Curtis.
For sure. Yeah, I know Shaw started off slow on offense, but do you feel like once they get into the district part of their schedule that they'll be able to get back on track?
Yeah, it's another thing about Shaw is I've seen them play 3 times. I saw them in a jamboree against St. Aug. I saw them against Carr in the opener. I've seen them against Rommel, and they might not play 3 better teams than that. And so they've had a tough going early on against some really good teams with an offense that only brought back 2 starters from last year's team that won the state title. So they're kind of feeling their way out offensively. I think as things go on, they'll be okay. They're very strong defensively, and you credit Shaw's defense, after it was 13-0 for not giving up another touchdown. Romo got down in the red zone and Shaw held firm. So there's some credit there for the Shaw defense. And I think they definitely have some stuff to kind of build on. Those 3 schools that I mentioned they played, they're not going to face anybody like that in the playoffs or anything like that. So, Division II select, I think Shaw still could do some good things going forward.
Good deal. You're watching the Friday Night Live NOLA Prep post-game show. Spencer Urquhart here with Joe Halm and Chris, Dave. Joe, you were at the St. Paul's De La Salle game. Ended up going St. Paul's later, 24-7, I believe the final was. Talk to us about what went down over there on the North Shore.
Yeah, this game was good at points and a grind at other points. It's 10-7 midway through the second quarter. De La Salle just scored, and St. Paul's finally gets something really going offensively. They're able to go down and score a couple of big plays by Cody Corrales. Daniel Hardy had a big reception. They run it in. They're up by 10 again. St. Paul's defense gets a big stop. Then the play of the game happens. Brady Pearson to Brennan Vila for an 87-yard TD catch and run. He catches it on a slant, just beats the entire defense down the field. It went from a 3-point game 5 minutes ago to a 17-point game at halftime, and St. Paul sort of just ground out of the second half there. And I credited St. Paul's defense for being able to do that because the offense really sputtered in the second half. And that was something that Coach Kenny Sears mentioned after they got to put together a complete game. But the defense had 3 turnovers. It was a good win for St. Paul's, and that game's always been close. And it felt close this year again, but it was never closer than 10 points, after the midway through the second quarter. St. Paul's always had a comfortable lead. So it was a big win for them, especially after Brother Martin. And then for De La Salle, that's a good 3-18. They are playing a gauntlet right now. They are maybe the best 0-3 team in the state. That's a good football team right there. And I think they'll be better for it when it comes to the postseason. But it's tough to lose 3 games in a row like that. So we'll see what they can do next week. But overall, a decent win for St. Paul's, and they'll move on to play Kennedy next week. And I think everyone came away from that game with some pluses on both sides of the ball and some things they needed to work on, which is, I think, what coaches secretly want after week 3.
Yeah, and,
For
I'd
sure.
like to add about De La Salle. I mean, they opened up against Central of Baton Rouge. That's a team that played in the Dome last year, and then Holy Cross in week 2, and so then St. Paul's is another tough opponent. So, like Joe said, being 0-3, but there's some other 0-3 teams out there that don't play a schedule nearly as tough, and they got St. Charles next week, and so I saw De La Salle against Holy Cross, and I liked a lot of what I saw. They got 3 good running backs. Eamon Williams, I think, might be the lead rusher of the group at the moment, and so they definitely have some things to build on as they back half of the season when they get into district play.
Yeah, Williams looked really good. Like he broke off some nice runs off tackle, and I mean he's a good little back. There's a lot of good building blocks for the Cavaliers.
Yes, indeed. Watching Friday Night Live NOLA Preps post-game show, and I am still at Destrehan High. That's where I was at tonight. Destrehan, Alexandria, clash of 5A powers, and it lived up to the hype. A really close game. Destrehan ended up falling short, though, 27-21 in a back-and-forth contest. The Wildcats actually scored first. Malachi Dabney, who had almost 200 yards, fell just short of that mark with 198 on, I believe, 25 carries. Had the first touchdown on a 2-yard run with 2 minutes to go in the first quarter. Pretty defensive-oriented to start. Then the offense started to get going when Alexandria's number 3, I believe, Raymond Williams. They had 2 Williams there going good there, running back, and he had their first touchdown as well as their second touchdown as well as their third touchdown. He scored 3 in a row. The first one in the second quarter, tied 7-7 at the half, and then they scored twice in the third, both from him. Short rushing touchdowns, went up 21-7, and then the Destrehan comeback effort began. Dabney finds the end zone again from 8 yards out early in the fourth quarter, and then Alexandria went up by 2 scores once again after they finally got their passing game going. A 16-yard pass to Williams, who had all 4 Alexandria touchdowns there. And then Destrehan had one more chance, but fell short. Jackson Fields completed 2 long passes there for first downs. Clock was running out. They actually had a really good 4th down stand prior to getting the ball back in the closing seconds. Alexandria could have run the clock out if they had gotten one more first down, but Destrehan stopped them there on 4th. They couldn't quite get enough to end the game. So then they completed 2 long ones. Field was running down trying to get it to clock it, but unfortunately time expired, and so Destrehan fell short there by 6 points. But a thrilling game for sure. Jabari Mack was making some good plays there. Destrehan's lead receiver, I believe, finished with around 60 yards there. Fields had close to 200 through the air, but unfortunately they just didn't quite get it going consistently enough through the air. The running game was good, but Coach Marcus Scott disappointed at the result. He was hoping they could have gotten this win. It would have been a big statement win for Destrehan at home, but Ashta, not a weak opponent by any means. Division 1 select state runner up there. So definitely a good class of 5A teams in this one.
Yeah, I was curious
What
how that
was
game might play out, because last year when Destrehan played up at Alexandria, they didn't have Jackson Fields, and he's he's a pretty important part of their team with being a starting quarterback, and so with him being healthy this year, I was wondering if they might be able to put up some points. But it sounds like Alexandria has got not only what you were talking about offensively, but a little bit defensively to kind of limit that Destrehan offense that can be high scoring when things are clicking.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, it was a good game. Yeah, I feel like but they also had a good bit of penalties in the game. That's something else Marcus Scott emphasized. They had too many penalties. They not could beat good programs with that many penalties. I believe it was 10 penalties for 80 yards. Actually, yeah, 10 for 80, 12 for 93 actually for Destrehan. Just looked at my notes there. So yeah, good. A lot of penalties, uncharacteristic for them. So that's something they'll have to clean up moving forward, 1 and 2 to start, but they start district play next week. And the most important thing I think for them is they're healthy. Fields is healthy, Dabney's healthy, Mac's healthy. Their best playmakers are healthy, so I think they're going to be just fine heading into district. But Hahnville could be tricky. So they had a statement win over E.D. White, the defending state runner-up tonight, 28-7, I believe, for the Tigers there. Greg Boyne, former Destrian offensive coordinator, appears to have Hahnville trending up. So that's always a good rivalry game. It was a good game last year. I covered it here at Destrian. I think it'll be at Hahnville this year. So a few weeks from now there, but that one will be one to look forward to.
Yeah,
What was the atmosphere like? Did people know it was two good teams, playing?
Oh, yeah, great atmosphere, a lot of media here. I believe it was the LHSA network was out here, and they had TV time out there. It was an official atmosphere for sure. Definitely one of those ones that people were people were disappointed in the result, but I'm sure still had fun. It was a fun Friday night out here.
Yeah, you mentioned Hahnville's win, and that's certainly a big win. Puts them at 3-0, and E.D. White, that's the best opponent they played this year. And we were talking about tough luck 0-3 teams, and E.D. White would be one of them, as they played against Holy Cross, Jesuit, and then Hahnville. I think there's a few other results from tonight that were pretty attention grabbing. St. Charles beat Dunham 27-20. And that puts the Comets at 3-0. That's a team that had a losing record last year, uncharacteristic losing record. They started out 0-4, and so now they're 3-0 against a good schedule playing. They beat Newman and then Lutcher. They shut out Lutcher last week, so I think that really gets some attention right there. Holy Cross, they're 3-0 now after having a losing record last year and not making the playoffs. They beat Chalmette 23-6, and so I think that's definitely something there. Then Easton being 3-0 as well, after they had a losing record as well last year, didn't make the playoffs. They beat Slidell tonight 64-49, which I know that game took about 3.5 hours to play. As a reporter who was out there called me right when it ended and said it wouldn't be in the newspaper tomorrow. So you'll have to see it online. And then Brother Martin, they beat New Hope 38-26. I don't know what Easton Royal may have done in that game, but I guess he did some good things. He may have seen the feature I did on him that published today, and being the top receiver, one of the top receiver prospects in the country.
For sure. Yeah, some interesting scores tonight for sure. Yeah, week 3 was action packed. We figured it might be, and it sure enough lived up to the hype there. So yeah, one other game before we move on to week 4. Brief look at there. One game I'd like to mention is that Thursday night, St. Martin's and Patrick Taylor, a very back and forth contest. St. Martin's ended up pulling that one out 42-41. Patrick Taylor had a chance to tie it, but they instead opted to go for the win with a 2-point conversion. They were trailing by 7, 42-35. Then Logan Rogers, their workhorse running back, had over 200 yards. They had 400 rushing yards as a team, by the way, over 400, but ended up losing by 1 as the 2-point conversion failed as a faulty pitch on the 2-point run attempt. And, they fell short by 1. St. Martin's won it as time expired. And, first win for the year for the Saints. St. Martin's there, Coach Kevin Dyser, happy about it. Their running back, Noah Dunn, he had over 100 yards and caught some screen passes, kind of reminiscent of Harlem Berry. I asked him about it, and he was like, "Yeah, it's big shoes to fill, but he's they're finally trending up there. The tough start of the year for St. Martin, but a good effort from Patrick Taylor, and that was a good barn burner there Thursday night at Memphis on the West Bank." So.
Yeah, and then another notable result would be Episcopal over Country Day, 66-57. Last year, Episcopal won that matchup 51-3, so certainly played out a lot differently this year. And good sign for Country Day to put up the points that they did. They're looking to have more of a passing offense that they've had in recent seasons, and sounds like that might be kind of coming to fruition.
Right, and don't want to forget St. Aug. They've got the Legacy School coming in from Texas tomorrow, and you'll be at that one, Chris. Any thoughts on that before we talk week 4?
Yeah, I know they have a quarterback who's the top-ranked quarterback in the state of Texas, and of course, I don't remember his name right now, but he's going to Houston, and I kind of expect that one to be it's two high-scoring offenses. St. Aug's won their two games by identical 56-6 scores against McDonough 35 and East St. John, and so I'm sure they're looking to put up some points, but they'll be facing what I assume will be some tougher competition against that legacy school of sports sciences, I think they're called.
Yeah,
Um, and but they have a quarterback going to Houston, a wide receiver going to Texas A&M, and of course, St. Aug has a couple of wideouts that could be going to Texas A&M or just about any other SEC school with Raekwon Williams and Miguel Whitley. So it'll be interesting to see how that one plays out. I know that legacy team has given up a lot of points as well. So I talk about the high scoring potential of the game. Maybe it'll be high scoring in favor of St. Aug.
for sure. Yeah, should be interesting there tomorrow. Another interesting matchup: East Jefferson and Willow School. They feature on Willow School went out there. Their offense looked really good to start the season. They lost to East Jeff last year. It'll be interesting to see if they can get redemption there. And then they got Newman week 4. So let's talk week 4 here. Some intriguing matchups. District play starts for some schools. Catholic League play starts. Rummel's at Curtis. Brother Martin's facing Jesuit. Carr facing Holy Cross. And Easton facing St. Aug. So all those, I mean, every 9-5A matchup's intriguing. But any of those that any one in particular that stands out to you, Chris?
Probably a couple of the two that are on Friday night, the Brother Martin Jesuit matchup and Rommel and Curtis. And Curtis, they didn't play this week. They had an open date. They have a hard time scheduling teams sometimes. But they scored 50 points in both of their two wins. They have over 1,000 yards rushing, which maybe is kind of what people kind of expect to see from that Curtis offense, but it doesn't always click quite like that. So it'll be interesting to see how that one matches up with Rommel, where they feel good about their two running backs, Corian Hawkins and Jaden Terrence, and they both have had nice games the last couple of weeks. So that'll be a good one. Rommel, and I'd like to be able to look this up as I'm talking about that matchup in reference to last year that Rommel won that matchup last year. They were 5-2 in district, and I wanted to see what that other district loss was. They gave up 69 points to Carr, but the other district loss was to Brother Martin, and so I thought that was one that Curtis won last year, but it was Rommel. So these are matchups where year by year you really don't know who is going to win. It's a tough district to predict, and I think it plays itself out in seeing how far teams get in the playoffs. Because the last 3 years, there's been a team with a losing record in 9-5A play that gets to either the semifinals or all the way to the dome. So that just tells you something about the quality of the competition there. And then that Jesuit Brother Martin one, I mean, that's always a game that gets a lot of attention. Two big schools, kind of traditional matchup right there. And it'll be my first time to go see Easton Royal play this year in a full game. I saw him in a jamboree. So looking forward to seeing after the 6 touchdowns and 1 touchdown pass he put up in the first 2 games, and I'm assuming he did something more tonight against a Jesuit team that always plays everybody pretty tough.
Yes, indeed. And real quick, Joe, my laptop's about to die here. Talk to us about that North Shore matchup there. Mandeville Slidell, big one there on the North Shore. So talk to us about that real quick before we sign off.
Yeah, I think a couple of 2-1 teams. Slidell's hosting. It's going to be another barn burner score wise. Slidell is really looking for a signature win in 5A. This would be it if they could beat Mandeville at home in a game after they, allowed 64 points to Easton. I feel like that team's going to have a chip on their shoulder defensively, and it should be interesting to watch. Crew Calora is going to be the starting quarterback. He's a freshman for Mandeville. So can that defense get after him? And if you're Mandeville, hey, you go on the road and it's a former district opponent who you're now playing in non-district play. It should be a really interesting game, and it should end probably about 10:30. So I'll probably be from my car next week, just like Spencer is this week. But I think that's probably the matchup of the week on the North Shore in week 4.
Good deal. And a couple other notable ones, Newman and Willow, like I mentioned that one earlier, and then St. Charles De La Salle. That's one I'm having my eye on. Covered that matchup last year. The stingy defensive game, De La Salle came out on top, but St. Charles improved this year, so that one should be good. But, yeah, good show, fellas. Wish we could keep going, but I think we're going to have to put a bow on this one. So appreciate everyone that watches here Friday Night Live NOLA Preps post-game show for Chris, Dabe, and Joe Halm. This is Spencer Urquhart signing off.